Welcome to the AxeCast podcast. Conversations with interesting people from the world of Acadia athletics and more, talking about their lives, successes, and failures. And now let's join hosts Glenn Hawley and Eric Cederberg for the next 15 to 20 minutes as they dive into the life of today's guest.
This week on the AxeCast, she's paddled her way from Fall River to Acadia and many points in between. Our guest this week is Ann Dodge. Ann, thanks so much for doing this.
It's a real honor. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, you are synonymous with Acadia, and we'll talk about your role at Acadia and being a student. But we really need to turn the clock back a few years and talk about growing up in Fall River and a lot of time on Lake Banook.
Yeah, we're rolling that clock back a long ways. Thanks, Len, for being so polite. It's quite a rollback. You know, I grew up in Fall River on the shores of Lake Thomas. My parents had a beautiful home on the water there, so we swam all summer and we skated all winter, quite literally with the environment then we could. So it was this amazing haven. I had 3 siblings, and we just had this amazing, incredible life of physical activity all the time. Not programmed, but we were always active. Mom didn't want us in the house, so we were outdoors playing a lot. At the age of 11, the canoe club started in Waverley, the Cheema Aquatic Club. My dad was one of those parents that were initially involved in organizing the club. The sport is huge in Dartmouth. You mentioned Lake Banook, huge in Dartmouth. And I don't know, I took to it. My friends were involved, was pretty good at it. And from, you know, that's kind of where it started. At age 11, 12, 13, by 15, I was on the national team, and it just went from there.
Is it something like that you always aspired to do, to compete at a high level, whether it was canoeing or any other sport?
You know, I wouldn't say that, Len, although when I think about it, I played every sport that was available in junior high and any community sport. That was the same with the majority of the members of my family, cousins and everything. My dad coached hockey, and we were just around it all the time. And I think, you know, when you excel at some of that, you really enjoy it. And again, if your friends are involved, you stick around and you get better at it. So I think competing came in time, and I am an incredibly competitive person, but initially that wouldn't have been the driving force, not at all. Just that I really loved doing it.
You know what I'm always amazed at when I see young athletes, when I say young athletes, because as you said, you were competing at a very high level, you know, 13, 14, 15 years old. You see gymnasts at the Olympics, you know, these young teenagers that are competing, you know, and you're, you know, as a young person, your brain doesn't develop until you get into your mid-20s. How did you take all of the success in at such a young age?
I guess when you were raised in the house that I was raised in, that was just part of it. Humility and modesty was a big part of the upbringing that we had. My parents wouldn't have tolerated a whole lot. My father's word was always foolishness. Wouldn't have tolerated a whole lot of foolishness around bragging or not being grateful for the opportunities that you had. So, I mean, I was raised that way, and I very much believe in that, to be humble and modest and just proud of what you've done, but you don't need to boast. You don't need to boast about it. So that, in combination with the coach that I had one coach my entire way through my canoe kayak career, is unheard of. I think if anyone considers coaches you had at junior high, high school, club, varsity, you know, maybe on to the pros, for me it was one coach that entire time. And his personality was very much that way too. You put your head down, you did the work, you worked really hard, and then you were just grateful for whatever benefits came from that.
So the Cheema Club, just to kind of get a little bit of history, I mean, it's world renowned now. It has a reputation. When your dad helped in starting that, was it more about just occupying some time during the summer for the kids? I mean, it's gone.
You are absolutely right, Eric. It was a case of, there were some bad kids. They were hanging around, burning the whatever, right? You know, there wasn't a whole lot to do. And they had a presentation from some of the clubs in the Dartmouth area. We had these beautiful lakes in Waverley and Fall River. So why not start a canoe club? Our head coach, Frank Garner, was a football player at SMU, and a great football player, a chance to go on and play in the CFL, but he had been a junior world level canoeer. So they went after a head coach. He was looking for summer employment. He came to Waverly. He started this canoe club. We started in '69, and you know, part of all of this is this induction into the Hall of Fame with the team in 1977. In those few years, he had created a Canadian championship team, something that those clubs in Dartmouth that had existed for decades had never done. He did that with local kids. It's a success. It's a Nova Scotia success story that I don't think gets the profile that it should, nor do I think Frank gets the kudos for what he did for us as young people to take us from that stage of, as I say, little troublemakers to really the Canada Games, the national team, and world stage with medalists, and that success has just continued. Cheema really is an incredible Nova Scotia success story.
Are you involved with Cheema at all now?
I am not anymore. I still paddle, but I paddle at a canoe club in Sackville as opposed to in Waverly.
I don't know. I mean, you've had so many highlights in your life, but I'd have to think, you know, on the surface to me, going to the 1976 Summer Olympics in Montreal has to rate up there if it's not on the top of your list. Talk about that experience, and we'd be remiss not to talk about your partner, who was Sue Holloway. In fact, you guys were the first Canadian women ever to reach an Olympic final in the sport. Just talk about that relationship with Sue and that experience.
Yeah. I just have so much respect for Sue as a person, but also as an athlete. She is a true friend. Sue competed in both the Winter and Summer Olympics that year. She's the first Canadian woman to ever do that. And at that time, the Olympics ran the same, right? There wasn't the 2-year stagger. So in February, she competed in the Winter Olympics in cross-country ski, and in July, she competed in the Summer Olympics in canoe kayak. I mean, who's heard of anything like that? Males have never, you know, done what Sue achieved as an athlete. So she's a great friend. We competed hard. We were 1 and 2 in this country. She was number 1, number 2 in this country for a long time. We competed in a K2 boat together, and were very successful on a world stage. And you know, she's just a remarkable. And to this day, they have a beautiful cottage here in the province, and we get together. I go to Ottawa and visit with her. Just a remarkable person and a really good friend. The Montreal Olympics, definitely a highlight. I get goosebumps thinking about it. People will say, oh, you didn't get to travel anywhere. Well, travel was nice, but you get tired of travel too. So here we were in Canada. I was 18 at the time. You know, we walked into that stadium as the last country, the host country, and 70,000 people are standing and cheering. Like, how do you, you know, how do you put an emotion on that? That probably for me was the greatest event that I remember being at the Olympics, was just that thunderous applause you heard walking down the tunnel and then coming out into the Olympic Stadium. Incredible. And then, of course, races, and, you know, John Wood won a silver medal. And I mean, it was just, it was an amazing, amazing event.
No, it's interesting. And of course, you're at Acadia, which we'll talk about with kinesiology. Gary McDonald is the coach of the Acadia swim team. He was also at the 76 Olympics as a swimmer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you guys know each other?
Not at all. No, not at all.
Funny to have 2 Olympians from the same Olympic year, both at Acadia right now.
Yeah. He wasn't from Nova Scotia. I mean, I knew there were 7 of us. I knew all of the Nova Scotia athletes that went. It's a very small group from the province, and I certainly knew all of them. But no, I don't. I didn't know Gary, and I really don't know him that well now.
So from the 76 Summer Olympics, you're named Nova Scotia Athlete of the Year in 1977. By this time, you're probably about 19 years old, and I would think university got delayed a little bit, but eventually you're going to land at Acadia.
Well, it was delayed, I guess, by my own choice. I started at Dalhousie out of high school in '76, and anyway, I didn't finish my degree for any number of reasons, but we would go away for Florida training camp 6 months or 6 weeks from part of the end of February into early April, and so that didn't lend itself well to studies in the second term. And anyway, for a whole lot of reasons, I didn't finish my degree. So I came to Acadia in 1988 at the age of 30 to correct the mistake. So I finished my degree in 3 years, having come back at that point in time. So, yeah. And that, with that, I'll just interrupt, Len. I will say that the Olympics, and people see that as a real highlight. In my life, after my daughter and my husband, graduating from Acadia University is the proudest moment of my life. No question. Because all of what it took to get back there and then to excel in academics and love my time at Acadia, it is one of the high points in my life. No.
You know what, there is a common theme with some of the people that we've spoken with, and that is perseverance, whether it's working from, leaving Acadia, going into becoming a national team player like, Cindy Ty and Andrea Burke. And we've got a reverse situation with you, the perseverance of leaving the sport and continuing on the education.
You learn so many of those really important lessons, as you both know. Most people listening will know that those lessons of just sticking to it. If you just put in the hard work, the benefits that come from it. And I learned that lesson in spades. I'd observed it with my parents that set such positive examples for us as children. I watched it with friends that excelled academically. Dad was an engineer, my brother's an engineer. I just feel if you put in the hard work, then such great benefits come from it. And sport is just a really good example of that for people who get the opportunities to, and of course not everybody gets the opportunity to continue to be involved, but I was really lucky.
You get your phys ed degree at Acadia, you'd go on to UMB and get a master's, and today you're a lecturer in kinesiology. And times have changed so much. We're sort of joking before we were doing this, as you said, you went in as a bit of a mature student compared to others. But and for you would have seen things with the students when you were a student through a different lens. And I'm just wondering now, when you look back over the last 30 years, where things have gone just from the student that you saw next to you when you were a student to what you see today in terms, you talk about the hard work and everything that goes along with it. You must see changes.
I see huge changes, and in the classroom I note huge changes, and certainly over the 30 years there have been a lot of them, societal changes. And there was a time when I went to Dell, the expectation was you came out with a really good job, period. And I think that would have been a possibility at that time. Even in the 30 years, that had changed. By the time I graduated from Acadia, that had changed. And then it's changed again, where the phys ed degree or your initial degree would have provided some type of employment, and that's not the case anymore. So, the kids are, and I call them kids, the students are going back and doing secondary degrees, and that's almost just recognized as a part of school, upper, advanced education today, that's going to be a necessity. So that's kind of unfortunate, where some of those degrees were part of an undergrad, I think of PT or OT, that were part of an undergraduate degree teaching at the time, and now there's more time to put in. But society's changed so much, and I don't just assume not get into a whole lot of discussion around that. But I think in some ways we've done a disservice to those young people of expecting less from them, or way more pressure for some parts of the rewards and not for others. So there's been a significant change, and I'll maybe just leave it at that.
You've been a tremendous advocate for women in sport. And again, you're competing at a very high level at a young age. And when you look since you were competing, and the opportunities for females today obviously has changed greatly, but I don't think it's where it needs to be yet. And I just maybe have some of your thoughts that go along with that and the way you see it today.
Yeah. I would wholeheartedly agree with that one, that we've made great headway and there's been good strides. There's just so much more to do. For athletes that can afford to play sport and be involved in physical activity, and that's certainly one of the greatest barriers that's been put up for all young people, is the cost of sport today. So that would be my first comment around it for young boys or young girls. There really are those financial barriers to get around. But for those that can be involved, we've almost reached parity with opportunity to play and be involved. but that certainly hasn't carried over at advanced levels where our Olympic teams still, although it's close, I don't know that close is good enough. Close is good enough. We're not at 50-50 as far as female-male representation. And then when we go to look at the coaching or the administrative levels, the numbers are so far apart for representation of males versus females. And I think at those tables, really important decisions are made and varying perspectives. I'm just speaking to gender here, and there are certainly race and sexual orientation, socioeconomic levels. There's all sorts of other categories that deserve the same consideration in discussions around that. But for me, it really has been about gender, because I know the benefits that I've received from being involved in sport, and I would love to think that every young girl that wants that opportunity should have that same opportunity. And that, I guess maybe that's what that really fuels me more than anything else, is for them to just be given the chance to be involved, just like any other person would have the chance to be involved.
Now, I know you yourself are very involved with mentorship, which I think it's one very important part of trying to create that equity. I know that you've been involved with Cause, which I know has changed from what I understand, and changed the name
Canadian Women in Sport.
Yeah, right. And that's been, they'll hit their 40th anniversary. And I know just from my experience in sport, being born and raised, born in 1964, and I see, I look back and I think back to the times when I played football, hockey, and how little, I look even at my friends, my female friends from school who were not involved in sports. So I guess the mission now is trying to have more women involved in sport. And I think the mentorship part is so important. And
but to me, the mentorship is just it's one of the central pieces of this. And I don't know that I set out to be a mentor in any way, really, other than leading, the cause sessions the cause that you talk about has sessions, organized sessions to try and promote the ideas of leadership and effective communication and conflict resolution, all sorts of things that way. But to me, the important mentorship is showing up. So it's being visible at the varsity games to let the female athletes know I'm there and I support them and I back them, and it's being there at the end of class to talk with a student that's maybe struggling, or it's be there in the office when someone drops by when they're having challenging situations, and perhaps because I played at that higher level, maybe they feel I can understand it more from a different perspective. I don't really know what it is, but the mentorship is not just a formal mentorship, but to me it's that important informal mentoring that you do along the way. So here in the province, we had a female coach mentorship program, for example. That was, I coordinated that program. I believe in the formalized piece of this, of providing the steps and helping people find their way. Sometimes that's financial assistance as well, take coaching courses or whatever that might happen to be. But also that informal mentoring to me is so incredibly important. Being available, open yourself up to being available to young women, and certainly do it with young men as well, but young women in particular.
I think you're seeing, Ann, what you're talking about here, even in the Annapolis Valley, and I think of two female sports at Acadia that I think have been so integral into helping with the development of young female athletes: women's basketball and women's volleyball. When I think of Michelle Wood, when she arrived at Acadia 6 or 7 years ago, and she had a handful of kids showing up for her camp, and now she's got a waiting list. And we look at women's basketball, what Bev Greenlaw did, and now Len Harvey's doing, and all the girls going out into the community, and they're filling that gymnasium with 700-800 people a night. And you're seeing a lineup of little girls that, just want to see the Haley McDonald's of the world. I've seen some major strides just in the last 10 years.
But someone has to be that advocate, right, Len? Like, somebody has to stick their neck out to put that extra time in. And Dalhousie and the provincial, I think of Michelle, the provincial volleyball program, all of that template exists. It's gone on for years, but someone has to want to do that here. And to me, there again is that mentorship piece. So perhaps you receive benefits of, you know, someday you'll have some of those kids to come and play for you. Maybe you won't. It pays some money. I doubt that any of that is someone's, the reason why anybody does that. You love your sport. You want other kids to be involved in it. You put in the extra time for that to happen. And it is a lot of time. And then young people get that opportunity. I can't tell you how cool it is to walk into a basketball game and see all those little girls watching our women play, and then to see them come down onto the court and the shots that they can take and how good, these are little kids. So somebody's putting in time with mental. Why shouldn't they? Why am I surprised? Why shouldn't they be as capable as anybody else that would be doing that? But I'm telling you, in my time, that's a major change. For our students, they don't see it that way because it's been more of the norm for them. But when you've got that longer lens to look at it from, it really is rewarding. Somebody put in the time, and so many people, so many young kids are reaping the benefits of that. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. We could talk for hours on this sort of stuff, and it's fascinating. But I know Eric is itching with his questions to sort of wrap things up here. Put you on the spot, Ann.
And now it's time for Eric's cut to the chase 5 questions.
I guess I got a couple, and I gave you a heads up with some of them. The one I guess I'm curious about is, I guess, what quality of yourself contributed to your success? Your success, I think, overall. I just not even with the Olympics and and your competitive paddling, but you have a characteristic, I think, that's really contributed to that. And what do you think that is?
I have to go back again, Eric, to the home that I was raised in. There was an example set for us of an expectation around hard work. No, nobody ever said anything to any of us about being the best at anything, and that is as honest as I can be. But pity help you if you didn't put in the work. Our parents expected us to be respectful, to work hard, to do well, to put in your time, do as well as you can. Be respectful of others, be respectful to others. And I watched them. You just put in the hard work. Both of my parents were incredible volunteers in our community. Minor hockey, the canoe club. My dad went right to the international Olympic level with my sport. My mom with the church, with the Parent Teacher Association. I mean, they volunteered and set a really good example. I was raised in a Christian home. It's just was this standard of, that was the standard you were expected to perform from in all aspects of your life. So I think it's that. I mean, I just believe in hard work. I believe in hard work every day. You do your part, you help others, you're respectful, but in the end, you're responsible for your own life and your own success in many instances, not all, but in many instances. And I just had that example for me. My friends were very much that way. I just have been so blessed with the situation where I landed as a child, and that set me up really well for my life.
What are 3 words you hope people will describe Ann Dodge as? I know it's kind of don't want to toot your own horn sort of thing.
Talk about yourself. That's not one of my favorite things. I would love people to think that I was fair. You try to be fair, and fair is not always equal, but I'd love to think people would see me as fair. I try to be fair. Caring. And probably something around principle. It matters to me. My principles matter to me, and morals and ethics, and that's kind of the course that I love teaching the most in our program. Around ethical issues in sport, but I'd like to be seen as a principled person.
I think you hit that one bang on, because most of the students I've spoken to about Ann Dodge have all said that. So I'm going to hit you with one last question, and I don't know if you're prepared for this or not, but is there any favorite quote you have? Is there anything out there that kind of floats around that you've heard that you consider one of your favorite quotes?
Well, I'm a person that loves quotes.
Oh,
so
really?
I have lots of them, and I save them, and I put them on the wall. Just all sorts of things of them. So that's an interesting final question. I would always start with the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That really has been the principle that I was raised with, and that I've really tried to live under, and as a parent to model, and certainly as a professor to model. But you have to believe to achieve. I think that, for me, you have to believe. I wrote that in the back of the book when I left to start my master's degree at UNB. You have to believe to achieve, and there's believe written on it right over here in my kitchen. It just, believe in yourself, believe in the fact that you can be successful, believe in others, believe there are better days ahead. That would probably be it for me.
I think you and Kevin Dickey should get together, because he loves his quotes too. So you guys could exchange some really good quotes.
I didn't know that.
Oh, he likes his quotes, doesn't he, Len?
He definitely likes his quotes.
Oh, cool.
Listen, Ann, this has been great. You know what? Hardworking, and you talk about your upbringing and what you brought to the lakes and all of your competitions, and that's been your theme as an educator at Acadia, and everything that you do in life. So congratulations on so many wonderful things, and the journey for you is still a long road. So thanks for doing this, and really appreciate your time.
Look, I just so appreciate the argument. There's lots of people you could speak with, but I appreciate the opportunity to tell my story. There's very little for Acadia that I wouldn't do. So this has really been fun. Thank you.
Thank you.